In the year 2437, the Etherian space station drifted in quiet orbit around a dying star. Once bright and full of life, the star now pulsed weakly, its golden light fading to a sickly red. Energy was running out. Colonies across the galaxy, dependent on the star's output, were growing desperate. Ships arrived daily, crowding Etherian's docks, their captains begging for power, supplies, and answers. At the heart of this chaos stood Captain Elias Voss. Elias was a man of few words. Tall, lean, and sharp-eyed, he had commanded the Earth fleet for nearly a decade. His face carried the weight of 1,000 decisions, and his silence often spoke louder than speeches. He didn't believe in drama. He believed in facts, in loyalty, and in action. When he spoke, people listened. Inside the command deck of the Starcourier, Elias's flagship, a low alert echoed through the steel corridors. Lieutenant Marin, his communications officer, rushed to his side. "Captain," she said, handing him a tablet. "This just came through from the Caven Deep Post. It's encrypted and urgent." Elias took the tablet, eyes scanning the message. The content was clear. A probe on the edge of known space had intercepted strange signals. Energy spikes. Ship formations. Varnokva Zignatulis. The Varnok. A cold silence fell over the room. The Varnok were not known for mercy. Decades ago, humanity had narrowly avoided a war with them. Now, with the star dying in power and short supply, they were coming back. This time, it wasn't a talk. Elias looked up from the tablet. "Prep the report. We go to the Council." The Intergalactic Council was the ruling body of Etherian. Formed to preserve peace, it brought together leaders from Earth, Mars, Titan, and 10 alien worlds. Their chamber was massive, oval-shaped, with smooth black walls and a skyglass dome revealing the red star above. Each seat bore a symbol, each voice once part of something great. But today, the council felt different. Cold, distant. Elias stood in the center of the chamber. His long black coat hung still at his sides. He placed a report on the central data node. A blue hologram flickered to life, showing Varnok ship movements. "They're mobilizing," he said, his voice calm but clear. "Their path leads straight to Etherian. They're coming for the energy core. If we don't act now." He stopped. Around him, council members stared in silence. Some blinked. Some whispered to aides. None spoke to him. He waited and waited. "Chancellor Virex?" Elias turned to the high seat. Chancellor Virex, an older man with silver robes and a face like carved stone, met Elias's eyes, but said nothing. He leaned back in his chair and simply tapped his fingers on the armrest. Elias's jaw tightened. "This is not a rumor. It's confirmed. They will strike. We must raise defenses now." Still, no answer. Elias looked around the room. The Martian representative lowered her gaze. The delegate from Hyrax, 3, fiddled with a stylus. A soft hum from the star above filled the chamber, like a heartbeat slowing down. So Elias spoke one last time. "Silence will not protect us." He turned, walked down the central path, and exited the chamber without another word. Outside, Lieutenant Marin waited. Did they listen? "No," Elias said, his face unreadable. They chose silence. The station lights flickered. Somewhere far in space, the Varnok ships crept closer. But on Etherian, the ones who held power said nothing. And because they said nothing, the galaxy was now in danger. Tension hung in the air like smoke. The halls of Etherian, once calm and orderly, were now filled with restless voices, echoing footsteps, and the constant hum of overheated power lines. People felt it. Something was wrong. The silence from the Intergalactic Council had not brought peace. It had brought fear. Captain Elias Voss stood alone in the observation chamber of the Starcourier. The dying star burned beyond the glass, its crimson light casting long shadows on the floor. He had delivered the warning. He had spoken, and the council had answered him with nothing. Not one word, not one action. Behind him, the door slid open with a quiet hiss. "Captain," said Lieutenant Marin, stepping inside. Her usually steady voice was tight with worry. "We've received over 24 communications from colony ships docked at Etherian. They're asking what's going on. They've heard rumors. Some say the Varnock are already here. Elias turned. His expression didn't change, but his eyes were sharp. What did the council tell them? He asked. Marin hesitated. Nothing. The message from the Chancellor's office was blank. Just a silent signal. Not even a status update. Elias nodded slowly. That silence was spreading. Confusion was taking root. Down in the lower sectors of Etherian, the signs of unrest were growing. Food supply lines were slowing. Minor scuffles broke out in docking bays. Engineers whispered to one another about evacuation. Families huddled in the market corridors, asking questions no one could answer. At the same time, the council remained hidden in its chambers, meeting in private, releasing no statements, issuing no commands. They believed that silence prevented panic. But panic was already here. Inside the Starcarrier's war room, Elias gathered his senior officers. Commander Reese, his tactical chief, leaned forward, voice low. Sir, the fleet captains are getting nervous. We've had requests to disengage from Etherian and return to colony patrols. They don't want to sit here doing nothing while the Varnock get closer. They're afraid, said Officer Yuna, the ship's strategist. And without clear orders, fear turns into rumors. Rumors into chaos. Elias stood at the head of the table, arms crossed. The council has failed to act, he said. But we won't. There was a long pause. The officers looked at one another, uncertain. Reese spoke first. Are you saying we break protocol? No, Elias replied. I'm saying we prepare. Quietly. No official movement. No sudden signals. We strengthen the fleet, we scan the borders, and we keep the people safe until the council either acts or falls silent for good. Yuna nodded. Understood. Begin at once, Elias said. Do it quietly. I'll speak again when I must. Meanwhile, the other colonies on Etherian had begun to draw lines. The Martians fortified their landing bays, claiming they were expecting cargo. Earthborne ships were ordered to stay docked, but their crews trained harder each day. The alien representatives of Titan and Gresh began holding private meetings without inviting the council. Without orders from above, everyone started making their own. And that was how trust died, one silent day at a time. Back in the council chamber, Chancellor Virex stood alone. He watched the flickering reports, saw the growing tension, and said nothing. He believed silence was strength, that showing fear gave fear power. To him, Elias's warning was not a threat. It was a test of patience. He had kept peace for years through silence. He would not change now. But outside those tall, dark walls, the world was already changing. That night, Elias returned to his quarters. He sat by the window, watching the dying star shimmer through the glass. He remembered the silence of the council chamber, the still faces, the refusal to act. He had given them the truth. They had given him nothing. And so the cracks began to form, not just in the council's authority, but in the fragile peace that held the galaxy together. The sky above Etherian never changed. The dying star glowed red, casting its pale light across the station's surface. But within the hearts of its people, something darker had begun to stir. Rumors no longer whispered, they roared. The silence of the council had become a signal. And the signal was this: you are on your own. Captain Elias Voss stood at the command deck of the Starcarrier, eyes focused on the live transmission from Caven Deep Outpost. A blur of static and panicked voices came through the speakers. We're under attack. Shields failing. Multiple vessels. Unknown design. No markings. Then the screen went black. Elias turned to Lieutenant Marin. Confirm location. Caven Deep, sir. Sector 19, border perimeter. Her voice was tight. That's the fourth outer post to go dark in the last 12 hours. Survivors? No response. No escape pods detected. Elias didn't need more evidence. He knew what this meant. The Varnock had begun their assault. Elias wasted no time. He gathered his officers in the Starcarrier's war room once again. The council refused to act, he said, pointing to a map on the wall. Red markers blinked across the outer colonies, each one a signal of an attack or a blackout. Now people are dying. Commander Reese spoke up. Are we ready to respond? Do we wait for authorization? No, Elias said firmly. We can't afford to wait anymore. This is a call to action. But we move smart. No grand gestures. No flags. We protect the people, and we do it now. Yuna, the strategist, leaned forward. That means we go against direct orders. There were no orders, Elias replied coldly. Only silence. The Starcarrier broke from formation hours later, joined by 3 other Earth fleet vessels, Sentinel, Valor, and Lancer. Together, they jumped into hyperspace toward the outer perimeter. What they found was worse than expected. Cave-in Deep was in ruins. The outpost had been turned to scrap. Its energy core was gone, torn clean from the base. Debris floated like bones through space. No survivors. Lieutenant Marin scanned the wreckage. There's no doubt. Varnock energy signatures everywhere. Reese stared at the screen, fists clenched. This wasn't a raid. It was a warning. They're testing our response, Elias said. And now they know we've done nothing. Back on Etherian, the silence cracked wider. News of a destroyed outpost spread fast. Independent traders broadcast the images. Refugees cried for help. Colonies demanded action. Still, the council offered no words, no strategy, no comfort, no truth. People no longer waited for leadership. They acted for themselves. The Martian fleet repositioned near the defense grid. The Titan delegation withdrew to their private cruiser. Even the Hyrax delegates, once loyal to the council, sealed their ports and ceased communication. Everyone was choosing sides. And then came the final blow. Elias returned to the council chamber with the wreckage data. He didn't ask for permission to speak. He simply spoke. 4 outposts are gone. Thousands are dead. We have confirmed Varnock weapons, Varnock tactics. I came to you once. I warned you. You said nothing. This is your second chance. Still, the chamber remained silent. He looked directly at Chancellor Virex. Say something. Anything. Virex's hands rested calmly on the armrests of his chair. His face was still, unreadable. Then he shook his head, just once. No panic, Virex said softly. Silence holds order. Elias stared at him. Silence kills. He turned and walked out, his steps echoing in the hollow chamber. That evening, Elias stood before his officers once more. I will not wait for another outpost to fall. If the council will not lead, then I must. There was a long moment of quiet. Then Commander Reese stepped forward. You have my loyalty. One by one, the others followed. Yuna, Marin, the bridge crew, the engineers, the pilots, even the cadets. This was no longer about orders. It was about survival, and the silence had lasted long enough. Elias looked out the window, the red star still burning. The first strike had been made. The war had begun. The silence had become unbearable. Captain Elias Voss walked the length of the Starcarrier's bridge, his boots echoing on the steel floor. Every crew member turned as he passed. No words, just looks of quiet understanding. Everyone aboard knew what was coming. The chain of command had been stretched too far. It was time to break it. Elias stopped at the front viewport. Beyond the glass, Etherian drifted in the shadow of the dying star. The station looked peaceful from a distance. But peace was a mask. Inside, the council still refused to speak, even as the outer colonies burned. He turned to Lieutenant Marin. Send the message. All Earth Fleet commanders. Private frequency. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. Moments later, the message went out across space. A call for a secret meeting. No council approval. No politics. Just captains and soldiers who still believed in protecting life. The meeting took place inside the Sentinel, docked just outside Etherian's defense ring. In the dim-lit war chamber, 8 fleet captains sat around a circular table. Some wore fresh uniforms. Others wore armor still scarred from the last battle. Elias stood at the center. The council has chosen silence, he said. But silence doesn't stop a war. We've all seen the destruction. We've lost people, colonies, outposts. And yet, they still do nothing. Captain Roan of the Valor spoke up. If we act without orders, we'll be labeled traitors. Elias nodded. Yes, but if we don't act, we'll be something worse, cowards. The room went still. We're not here for glory, Elias continued. We're here to protect the people. If that means disobeying a council that won't lift a finger, so be it. I won't lead a rebellion. I'll lead a defense. But I won't wait for permission. For a long moment, no one said a word. Then Captain Nera of the Lancers stood. I'll follow you, Elias. Not because I want war, but because you're the only one talking sense. One by one, the others agreed. That night, the Earth fleet divided. Half remained loyal to the Council. The rest, led by Elias, formed a quiet coalition. They had no flag, no formal title. Only a mission: defend the innocent and prepare for the Varnok's next move. When Chancellor Virex received the report the next morning, he read it in silence. A mutiny, one of his aides whispered. No, Bidex replied calmly. A mistake. But sir, they're rallying ships. Moving weapons. They've abandoned Council protocol. Virex folded his hands. Let them act. The moment they strike, we'll expose them as aggressors. He leaned back, eyes cold. Their voice will condemn them. Back on the Starcreer, the mood had shifted. For the first time in weeks, the crew felt purpose. Engineers worked longer hours. Pilots trained in pairs. Defensive satellites were deployed in secret across the outer sectors. But Elias knew it wasn't enough. The Varnok had not made their full move yet, and the colonies were still scattered, still unsure who to follow. It was a race between clarity and chaos, and time was running out. Elias walked the upper deck of the ship and stopped at the old fleet banner, now folded in a glass case. It bore Earth's emblem, a fading symbol of unity. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he whispered to himself, "One voice is not enough. But it's a start." The next day, the Council made its move. A formal decree was sent to all Earth fleet ships. Return to Council control immediately. Captain Elias Voss is acting without authority. Disregard his orders. On some ships, that message was followed. On others, it was ignored. Lines were being drawn not by force, but by choice. And Elias knew, once the next Varnok fleet arrived, those choices would be tested. He didn't seek power. He never asked for command beyond the fleet. But when silence becomes betrayal, even the quietest man must speak. And he had. Space had never felt this loud. Outside the Etherean defense perimeter, stars shimmered as fleets moved like shadows. Ships no longer flew in organized patrols. Now, they drifted in nervous formations, watching each other as much as they watched the darkness beyond. The Council's silence had shattered into cold accusations. Captain Elias Voss was branded a rogue, a disruptor of peace. But many didn't believe that anymore. They had seen too much. They had heard the silence and felt the emptiness it left behind. The Varnok did not wait. They came without a warning. 15 warships, dark as obsidian and sharp as blades. They crossed into human territory and struck without words. Colonies on the rim screamed into the void for help, and Elias answered. The Starcreer led the charge. Elias stood tall on the command deck, eyes locked on the tactical map. Red blips bloomed across the screen, Varnok positions fast and deadly. We're outnumbered 3-1, Commander Reese reported. But our interceptors are faster. We can hit and retreat. No retreat, Elias said. We draw them away from the colonies. Keep them busy. Buy time. Una, calm as ever, added, sending coordinates to allied fleets now. Outer sector support confirmed. 2 ships from Titan and 1 from Hyrax. They've joined us. Elias gave a small nod. The Council might be silent, but the galaxy was starting to choose. The first battle unfolded in a stretch of space known as the Gray Rift, an uncharted zone between the Edge colonies and the dying star. It became a graveyard of flame and broken metal. Elias commanded with precision. His fleet moved in tight arcs, striking fast and pulling back. The Lancer took heavy damage early on, but Elias diverted fire by exposing the Starcreer's flanks, risking his own ship to protect theirs. It worked. The Varnok warships weren't expecting resistance this organized. Their movements slowed, confused. One of their lead vessels was crippled by a direct plasma strike from the Valor. For a moment, hope returned, but only for a moment. A second wave of Varnok ships emerged from deep space. 10 more. Bigger. Stronger. Elias had not expected their full fleet so soon. Back on Etherian, the council watched the battle from sealed chambers. "They've forced our hand," one delegate whispered. "If we speak now, we lose control." Virex stood in the shadows, arms crossed. "They've already taken control," he said. "We let them. Now we wait. When they fall, we speak again, with strength." But outside those walls, no one was listening anymore. The second wave hit hard. The Sentinel was boarded. Fires broke out on the Lancer's lower deck. Emergency calls filled every channel. Elias's voice cut through the chaos. "Focus fire on the lead Varnock cruiser. Target spine. Break their line." The Starcreator took a direct hit to its side. Sparks flew across the bridge. Crew members held their ground. Systems flickered. Still, Elias stood steady. Suddenly, a new alert flashed on the main screen. "Captain," Marin shouted, "the Deadless, our long-range scout, is reporting internal sabotage. Someone's triggered a signal beacon. The Varnock are tracking it." Elias's face hardened. "Who's on board?" "One of our own, Lieutenant Solon." Solon, loyal, trusted. He had served beside Elias for years. "Give me a link," Elias said. The screen blinked. Solon's face appeared, bruised, sweating. Behind him, lights flared red. "I had no choice, Captain," Solon said. "They took my daughter. I gave them a signal route. I'm sorry." The feed cut. The betrayal stung deeper than any weapon. Elias looked at his crew. "We seal off the signal path. We reroute communications. And we hold." They didn't question him. Hours passed. The battle raged. Ships fell on both sides. The Starcreator limped, but didn't break. The United Fleet, small, battered but determined, pushed the Varnock back to the edges of the Gray Rift. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't defeat either. It was a warning. We will not be silent anymore. As the wreckage cooled and emergency repairs began, Elias walked the outer deck of the Starcreator, suit sealed, helmet reflecting the fading stars. Around him, pieces of destroyed vessels drifted like ash in water. A voice called to him through the comms. It was Una. "We lost the Sentinel," she said. "But the Lancer survived, and we have a message from the Hyrax ship. They're ready to form a coalition. Independently." Elias stood still for a moment, then said, "Tell them we'll speak soon. Together." As he stared into the void, he knew this was far from over. But the fire had been lit. The silence was gone. Now, the galaxy would have to listen. The stars above Etherian pulsed faintly in the deep silence after battle. The wreckage from the Gray Rift conflict drifted across space. Burnt hulls, twisted metal, shattered lives. Among the ruins, the surviving ships of Captain Elias Voss's fleet regrouped. It wasn't a victory parade. There were no cheers, no celebrations. But they were alive. On the Starcreator, repair crews worked nonstop. Sparks flew from cut panels. Burned wiring was pulled out and replaced. Medics moved between injured crew members in the lower decks. Despite the damage, the ship still flew, and Elias was still standing. Elias stood in the main briefing room, surrounded by his officers and the captains of allied ships. Martian, Hyrax, Titan. The table before them showed a live feed of Etherian and the space around it. New movement was detected. "The Varnock are coming again," Eunice said. "This time in full force. 30 ships, 2 heavy carriers. They're not just raiding now. They're going to take Etherian. They want the energy core," Elias replied. "If they get it, they control the entire sector. The colonies will fall next." Commander Reese crossed his arms. "We can't hold the line alone. Half our ships are damaged." "We won't be alone," Elias said quietly. "Not this time." Elias sent a final message, one not hidden, not encrypted. It went out to every ship, every colony, every council station still listening. It was a simple message. "We are not rebels. We are defenders. We will stand at Etherian, not for power, but for survival. If you believe in peace, join us. If you believe in silence, stay behind. But know this, silence will not save you." Hours passed. Then ships began to arrive. Not many at first. 1 from Gresh, 2 from the outer moons, an old freighter rigged with stolen plasma cannons. Then more. A dozen ships. Then 20. Even some council-loyal ships defected, their crews disobeying orders and following Elias. For the first time since the war began, the galaxy chose a side, and they chose a voice. In the council chambers, Chancellor Virex watched it all unfold from his high seat. "They've made their choice," an aide said nervously. Virex nodded. "Then let them die with it." He activated the final defense lockdown on Etherian, an automated barrier grid designed to keep threats out or keep rebels away from the station's core. The final battle began just beyond Etherian's atmosphere. The Varnock came fast. Their warships spread out like blades, slicing through the void. The sky lit up with cannon fire and energy bursts. The United Fleet met them head-on. Elias led from the Starcarrier, giving orders calmly, clearly. Strike teams Alpha and Delta flank left. Hyrax bombers aim for their carrier engines. Keep the line tight, don't let them break through. Explosions lit up the darkness. Ships fell on both sides. The Lancer was hit hard and spun out of formation. Elias sent 2 interceptors to cover its retreat. The Varnock concentrated fire on the defense grid, trying to reach the station's energy core. But Elias had already anticipated this. With help from a Titan engineer crew, he had rerouted the grid's energy to power a hidden cannon, something forbidden by the Council. Now he gave the command, "Fire the Omega Array." A massive beam of white light tore through space, slicing one of the Varnock carriers in half. Shock rippled through their fleet. Still, they fought. Inside the station, Virex watched in fury. "They're winning," his aide whispered. "No," Virex said. "Not yet." He tried to activate the override to shut down the defense grid. But a new alert blinked across his console. Access denied. Authority overridden by Fleet Command. Elias had already taken control. The Chancellor stood in silence, staring at the screen. Then he turned and walked away. Back in space, Elias's fleet pushed forward. The Varnock, now outnumbered, began to retreat. Cheers broke out across the ships. But Elias didn't smile. He opened a channel, one final message. Not to the enemy, not to his fleet, but to Virex. "This silence was yours. Every life lost was because you said nothing. But we spoke, and now we stand. The Council is finished. You are finished." There was no reply. The Varnock vanished into deep space, defeated for now. The battle was over. But the war had changed something more than territory. It had changed who the galaxy would listen to. In the ruins of the Council chamber, Elias stood where he had once pleaded for help. Now he stood not as a beggar, but as a leader. Delegates from the colonies met him there. They didn't ask for permission. They didn't wait for a vote. They offered him the chance to lead. But Elias looked around the chamber, then shook his head. "I've already spoken," he said. "Now it's your turn." He turned and left, coat trailing behind him, boots echoing in the hall. Outside, his crew waited. He stepped aboard the Starcarrier one last time. He opened a channel to all fleets. "I spoke once more, but only to say goodbye." The channel closed. The war had ended, but the scars remained. Across the galaxy, the wreckage of broken ships drifted through space like quiet memorials. On Etherian, the last of the smoke had cleared. Fires were put out, and the station's wounded heart began to beat again. Power returned. Lights flickered to life. Life, slowly, began to move forward. But something had changed. The Intergalactic Council was gone. Its chambers stood empty. The great black chairs once filled by silent delegates now sat cold and still. The banners were torn down. There were no guards at the doors. No voice came from that room anymore, and no one missed it. In its place, a new assembly formed. Not a ruling council, but a coalition of colonies. Equal voices. Shared command. Not perfect, but willing to speak. At the center of this new movement was the name of a man who had once stood alone in silence. Captain Elias Voss. But Elias was no longer on Etherian. Far from the station, the Starcarrier cruised through open space, its systems quiet, its engines steady. The ship had been repaired, but it had not returned to the fleet. It flew a lonely path now, away from politics and titles. Elias stood on the upper deck, staring out the main viewport. The stars stretched endlessly before him. For the first time in weeks, the silence around him was peaceful, not forced, not fearful. Just quiet. Lieutenant Marin entered the bridge. She moved with purpose, but without the stress that had filled every step during the war. The new assembly sent another message, she said. They want to name you commander of the coalition fleet. Elias didn't answer right away. He kept his eyes on the stars. I never wanted power, he said last. Just truth. Just action when it mattered. They say you earned it. I spoke when it was needed, Elias said. Now it's their turn. Mara nodded. What should I tell them? He turned to her. His voice was steady, quiet. Tell them I've already said goodbye. The message was sent. And so the coalition moved forward without its loudest voice. Elias had become a symbol. Not because he had shouted, not because he had forced his way to power, but because he had dared to speak when no one else would. Across the colonies, people told stories of the battle at the Grey Rift, of the Silent Council, and of the captain who broke that silence with only a few words, and started a war that ended with peace. On the Star Courier, Elias stood one last time in the war room. The map that once showed battles and threats now displayed calm space. The alerts were gone. The war logs were archived. He reached for the command console, entered a final log. This is Captain Elias Voss. The council is no more. The war is over. The silence has passed. I leave behind no orders, only a reminder. Speak what matters. Even once is enough. He closed the console, turned, and walked away. Outside, the Star Courier continued into the unknown. No destination, no orders, just a path ahead. In his absence, the colonies remembered his words, not his rank. And peace, though fragile, held, not because of silence, but because someone had finally spoken.